If you've been wondering what's actually going on with Hogwarts Legacy 2 and whether this thing is real or just another internet rumor cycle getting out of control, I've got answers. We have enough information now to actually sit down and piece together what Warner Brothers is doing here, because for a while, everybody just assumed a sequel was inevitable. The first game sold so well for them not to make another one. When you have a machine or a tree that grows money or a machine that prints money, you're going to keep printing. But there's a huge difference between fans assuming something and Warner executives publicly talking about it as one of the company's biggest priorities, and that's where this whole conversation changed. We still don't have an official reveal trailer for Hogwarts Legacy 2. We don't have any gameplay. We don't have a release date. There's not even an official title yet, but behind the scenes, it's clearly real, very clearly important, and honestly probably one of the biggest projects Warner Brother Games has internally going right now. The crazy part is how much bigger this sequel may actually be compared to what people expected after the first game launch. Welcome to the channel, everybody. Jimmy or Chaos. Today, we're going to go over everything about Hogwarts Legacy 2, the leaks, the rumors, the confirmations, all of it. I read every single comment on every single video, so chime in. And if you look at the business side of this, Hogwarts Legacy didn't just perform well. It exploded. It did. Warner said the game sold over 12 million copies and made $850 million in the first 2 weeks. Are you kidding me? Then by the end of 2023, they announced it crossed 22 million copies. Then later, they officially pushed that number to beyond 40 million units. That's insane. It's insane for a brand new RPG franchise. I know it's attached to one of the biggest franchises in the world, but it's still insane. We're not talking about a small fan favorite success story. We're talking about one of the biggest games Warner Brothers has ever produced. Now, honestly, that explains why Warner started treating this game differently than most of their other projects. Around 2024, Warner Brothers Discovery CFO Gunnar Wiedenfels openly called a Hogwarts Legacy successor one of the company's biggest priorities moving forward. That's not vague PR talk there. That's executive level confirmation for us that this franchise is now one of the pillars holding up their gaming division. And things got even more interesting when David Haddad later confirmed the sequel was already in production and said something that immediately got the internet going crazy. He said, the teams behind the game and HBO's upcoming Harry Potter series were coordinating big picture storytelling elements, working together. That's right, coordinating. That's one line. It changes the entire conversation around Hogwarts Legacy 2, because now everybody immediately starts asking the obvious question. What does that mean? Does it mean the sequel moves closer to Harry Potter's timeline? Does it mean the characters from the HBO show somehow cross over into the games? Are they building some kind of connected Wizarding World universe where the games and the shows line up together in canon? Or is Warner simply trying to make sure all their Harry Potter projects feel totally connected moving forward? Right now, we don't know. Just Warner Brothers. But here's what I think people need to actually slow down on a bit, because the internet immediately jumped straight into Harry Potter himself is going to show up territory. And honestly, I know on one side that would be crazy and people would go nuts and it would sell the game. It truly would. But I don't think that's the most likely outcome at all. I mean, one of the biggest reasons the original Hogwarts Legacy worked was because it intentionally stayed away from Harry's timeline. I mean, Avalanche Software specifically said they chose the 1890s because they wanted players to feel like the main hero without actually competing against already established legendary characters like Harry and all of them. I mean, the freedom was a massive part of why the game felt fresh. You didn't feel boxed into recreating movie moments or trying to awkwardly fit around existing canon constantly. And I know there's going to be a group of you in the comments to say, I'm okay with that. Give me the legacy characters. Let me be Harry Potter. I get it. But obviously they made the right decision. 40 million copies sold. That also explains why ancient magic became such a huge focus in the first game. Avalanche found a section of Wizarding World lore that barely had any established rules attached to it, which that obviously gave them the creative freedom to build something new without constantly stepping on the toes of existing Harry Potter storylines, which I promise you, the Harry Potter fandom will find it, and they will let you know about it if you mess up or if you create plot holes or any type of canon missteps. So when Warner talks about coordinating with HBO, I think the smarter interpretation here, what we should take from it, isn't probably the sequel becomes Harry Potter Season 0. I think it's more likely that Warner wants lore consistency. They want alignment, maybe shared bloodlines. You could have family names that are attached. You could, of course, have magical artifacts, institutions, stuff like that. You could even do long-term story ideas that connect the broader Wizarding World together without completely abandoning what made Hogwarts Legacy successful in the first place. Honestly, that makes way more sense to me. Now, there's another huge piece of this story that people overlook, And that's what's been happening internally at Warner Brothers Games overall. The company itself has been going through some serious restructuring lately. David had stepped down. Warner shut down multiple studios. Reports came out about cost cutting and strategic changes and layoffs, but during all of that, Warner repeatedly narrowed their focus down to 4 core gaming franchises moving forward. You let me know if they hit the nail on the head. Harry Potter, DC, Mortal Kombat, and Game of Thrones. I mean, yeah, Harry Potter, DC, Mortal Kombat, Game of Thrones. Now, when companies start cutting projects and they reorganize, the brands that survive those conversations are the ones they believe are the safest long-term investments. They're the ones that they don't feel are a gamble. Hogwarts Legacy didn't just survive this process, of course. It became one of these centerpieces moving forward. So while restructuring normally creates uncertainty around certain games, which it did, in this case, it did the opposite. Hogwarts Legacy 2 now feels more protected than ever because Warner has basically admitted this franchise is way too valuable to not prioritize and put at the head of the table. Now, as for who's developing it, Warner still technically hasn't done the huge formal announcement saying that Avalanche Software is officially leading Hogwarts Legacy 2, but let you and me be honest with each other, the evidence, it's overwhelming. Warner job listings repeatedly mentioning the team behind the blockbuster open-world RPG Hogwarts Legacy, working on this next. Avalanche hiring posts, I mean, they continue to reference future projects tied to the Wizarding World, so I have to ask you guys, are you comfortable with Avalanche taking on Hogwarts Legacy 2? I'll answer for you. You should be. I think they're going to do an outstanding job. So unless Warner is doing some weird wording gymnastics here, Avalanche is very obviously heavily involved. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting. What does Hogwarts Legacy 2 actually need to improve? This is where you guys really chime in too, because this is where the first game kind of becomes interesting to talk about. Hogwarts Legacy nailed the atmosphere. Can we all agree? Walking through Hogwarts for the first time genuinely felt special. I think the castle design was good. The flying around the brooms worked way better than people expected. Hogsmeade felt alive. The music, it was great. And the overall immersion of simply existing in the wizarding world not attached to Harry was the best it's been in a game. But at the same time, the first game also had weaknesses. And that became more obvious the longer people played it. Those weaknesses were the RPG systems that were pretty shallow compared to what people wanted. Your choices really mattered. There was no real morality system. You could basically become a dark wizard with almost zero consequences. I mean, companions, they were limited outside their designated quest lines. NPC interactions eventually started feeling repetitive, and despite being set in a school, the actual student life systems, they weren't nearly as deep as people hoped. Now, that's probably the single biggest pressure point on the sequel right now. Fans don't just want a bigger map this time. They want a deeper, more immersive Hogwarts experience. They want relationships that matter. I mean, the house rivalries, the companion systems, consequences for dark magic, better classes, more dynamic NPC schedules, a living school simulation instead of just a beautiful open-world action RPG wearing Hogwarts clothing, right? And honestly, I think Warner has to know this by now because those criticisms, they've been everywhere since launch. And the interesting is, none of those upgrades are officially confirmed. Warner hasn't announced morality systems. They haven't confirmed any co-op. They haven't revealed multiplayer. They haven't shown Quidditch. But if you're trying to predict where the sequel is most likely heading mechanically, I think this is absolutely the areas people expect them to evolve. You let me know. Let me know some areas that they should evolve that I did not mention. And speaking of multiplayer, this is where the rumor side of the conversation gets a little bit messy. There's been various reports and hiring listings mentioning online multiplayer RPG projects tied to Avalanche. So, we automatically assume it's Hogwarts Legacy 2, full multiplayer. Right now, there's no official confirmation connecting those online projects directly to the sequel itself. I mean, could multiplayer happen? Absolutely. Would co-op make sense? Definitely. But there's still a huge difference between possible and confirmed. And people online, they like to blur those lines together. Personally, me, I think limited co-op feels more believable than some huge giant MMO-style Hogwarts experience. The fantasy of exploring Hogwarts with friends, it's obvious. It's too obvious for Warner to at least not consider, but at the same time, the first game succeeded because it was immersive and personal, not because it was chasing live service trends. Live service can always end but bad. We know that. Live service is a term we don't like to use on the channel a lot. Now, honestly, Warner probably understands they can't afford to mess this part up. And there's another interesting piece of the entire story that involves the canceled Hogwarts Legacy DLC and the Director's Cut project. Reports from Bloomberg and VGC themselves claimed Warner had planned additional content expansions for the first game before eventually canceling them. Now, that doesn't necessarily sound important at first, but think about what it means. That means that Avalanche clearly still has ideas to use. There's more systems, more content, more story concepts, and when projects like that get canceled, those ideas don't just disappear. Not forever. They usually get absorbed into the sequel. So there's a very real possibility that Hogwarts Legacy 2 becomes less of a traditional sequel and more of a second attempt at fully realizing ideas the first game didn't either finish or didn't properly build. Now, tech. It's another area where expectations are through the roof. Avalanche has already talked previously about looking forward to Unreal Engine 5 for future projects. This does not officially confirm Hogwarts Legacy 2 is using UE5, but let's be honest with each other. It will. The first game looked impressive despite, being designed around older hardware limitations. A full next-gen focused sequel with UE5? Come on. The NPC behavior, the world density, the lighting, the spell effects, all of it, the immersion, that is huge. That's another reason the release window is probably farther away than people want to talk about. There's a lot of fans online that keep acting like this thing is right around the corner, but I'm here with the bad news. Warner execs themselves keep hinting at 2028 or on. That feels much more realistic. Honestly, it lines up with the bigger HBO Harry Potter strategy, too. Warner likely wants this entire Wizarding World revival to overlap. New HBO series gets going, new games, bigger franchise momentum, everything feeding into one another, right? Instead of isolated events that are years apart. And then you have the controversy side of it. There's no way to discuss Hogwarts Legacy without acknowledging it. The original game became heavily tied into broader conversations surrounding J.K. Rowling and the ongoing debates around her public comments and views. Warner officially stated Rowling was not directly involved in creating the game itself, though they did work with her team to maintain Wizarding World consistency. Regardless of where people stand on that, the reality is the sequel will almost certainly face the exact same conversations when marketing ramps up. And honestly, the bigger Warner pushes the Harry Potter franchise back into mainstream entertainment with HBO and gaming simultaneously, the louder those debates will be. But let's put that aside and let's look at the game. I think Hogwarts Legacy 2 has the potential to be significantly better than the first if Avalanche listens to the community. The foundation's there, the atmosphere works, the world works, the fantasy works, and they just need more depth. Game felt incredible. It did. It felt like a great first draft of what a true modern Wizarding World RPG could become. The sequel, if they have the opportunity to fully evolve it, could be special. Let me know what you guys think. I'll keep you posted if anything new comes, and I'll see you soon.